All right, welcome everybody. Again, the chat has the link to sign in along with the link to get warmed back up thinking about those theoretical pieces from session 2. This is the Adolescent Literacy Webinar Series offered through the Kentucky Department of Ed in the Office of Teaching and Learning. I'm Kristen, and I'm joined by my colleague Lee Turner, who is my elementary literacy counterpart. We work in the Division of Program Standards, which is just one division at KDE that focuses on improving literacy outcomes for students. That is a huge part of a lot of work at the state level, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And we're so excited to offer this opportunity tonight for 6 through 12. 6th through 12th grade specifically, and what can we do for those students. This is part 2, so if you are watching at a later date, find part 1 on our website. So tonight, this is what we're going to get into, and then it's going to be a little bit of me and Lee talking, and then we're actually going to talk about some practices. One piece of feedback we got from everyone was that the theory is really nice to know, but we don't always have the luxury to know that, and we also want to know what are the strategies. And so yes, tonight we're actually going to get into classroom practices based on the evidence and the research that we have that can actually support students. So we did not get to Scarborough's reading rope at the end of the last session, so we're going to kick off with that in just a few moments. We're also going to talk about, and we will do this at every session, what happens in literacy instruction in younger grades. That is a really important piece. At least for me, I can't speak for every middle and high school teacher, but for me as a high school teacher, I didn't really know a lot about reading development and how that happens. So we always devote a small portion of these sessions just to talk about what is it that actually happens when a person learns to read. And tonight we're going to be talking about phonological awareness and phonics. It's not just something that grows in the brain and we're all born knowing how to do it. So Lee's going to spend some time talking about what do our colleagues in K through 5 do to support that and to help students know how to do those things. And then the bulk of our session tonight will be all about these two things: helping students with decoding multisyllabic words or words with multiple syllables in those complex grade level texts that they're reading. And the second thing is thinking about morphemic analysis, or breaking words into meaningful parts, and thus knowing how to break lots of words into parts and determine the meanings of multiple words. All of this, of course, is with our goal of comprehension. We know that we're at the word levels, comprehension can break down. So that's why this session comes really early on in our series. What can we do for students whose comprehension is breaking down at the word level? All right. The most important thing from these procedures, which you can look at on your own, is that you do need to sign in and sign out if you're getting attendance or receiving a stipend from your district for this learning process. Even if you're online, please do mark that attendance so we just know who's accessing our resources. And also it's a way to give us feedback. This is a fairly large group. We've got 88 people in here right now, and maybe some more will join us. And so if you want to have those one-on-one discussions, join us in the office hours. We'll talk about in a moment. We have some learning agreements. I think the two most important are these at the bottom, and please always come even if you haven't had a chance to do the pre-work. Tonight, we had asked everyone to read a handful of pages. I cannot remember the precise number right now. I think it's between 7 and 11 pages from our text. And even if you didn't get a chance to do that or to fill out the note catcher, please always join us. There is something to be learned even if you haven't had a chance to do that. As I pointed out earlier, lots of folks are doing this on the fly, or they have family engagements or other work engagements, or just don't want to be on camera after a long day at school. I know a lot of folks went back to school after fall break today. So please join us as you're able and participate as you're able. And then because it is a larger group, and we know it can be really hard to put our learning into action in isolation, so we invite you to process your learning with a colleague. As mentioned, we do have these opportunities to go deeper. If you're a leader, this Friday at 9 Central, 10 Eastern, we'd love to have you to talk with what are some systems level supports for adolescent learners. And then if you're an educator, we'll have you back here, same time, same place, here on Zoom on Monday, October 28th. So if you want to know all about those sessions, we have this page that's on our Google Classroom. It's also linked on our learning plan. We would love to have you if and when you're able, and if that would be a support to you. Okay. materials for this learning. Of course, we have our IES practice guide. This is what I referenced earlier. I hope that you've had an opportunity to bookmark this page here. This is how you access everything, even if you're not able to join the Google Classroom or you don't want to participate in the Google Classroom. We do have this document here, and it just tells you everything that is available. It has links, and so Leah's going to drop that in the chat right now just to make sure folks have access to it throughout the night. And then, of course, if you haven't printed this absolutely free and so well documented, so well researched guide for supporting students, we ask you to print and have that as well. So speaking of that guide, Lee and I did not just randomly think, what should our sessions be about? All of the sessions that are coming up over the next 6 months are based on research and evidence of what we know students need, even as an older student, what they need to be able to be a proficient reader. And so here we are in the second month of our learning. It's crazy to think we're already in session 2, but you can also see where we're heading. If tonight feels like, I don't know that my students need support with multisyllabic words, they can generally decode the words, please know that the sessions may become increasingly more helpful to you, especially if you're a high school person and most of your students are decoding. Please just keep in mind the sessions may continue to become more helpful to you. All right, where we left off last month, if you had a chance to join us last month or to watch our recording, this was one of the pre-work assignments that we hope you got a chance to look at. It's just 27 minutes, pardon me, discussing some of these theoretical underpinnings of reading instruction, right? It's not just that, oh, we've just decided this is how reading should be taught. There's so much research and evidence that tells us, and one of those theoretical components is Scarborough's reading rope. And in the podcast, you may recall, they said that the reading rope does a better job conveying the complexity of comprehension. Comprehension is a beast. And so the goal of everything we do is to help students access those complex grade level texts that are in front of them. And so Lee now is going to talk us through that last theoretical component we didn't get to last time. And then she's going to take us into thinking about what does it look like in the lower grades when a child is first learning how to decode. Lee?
Thanks, Kristen. So before we jump into the rope, I want us to think back to the simple view of reading and really take into account, Kristen, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. The simple view of reading is really, nope, go back. Sorry. It's really intended to be very simple. It's word recognition times language comprehension will equal reading comprehension. And we went through a series where if we had a kid who had really strong word recognition, but only understood the language or the genre at about a half, then their reading comprehension would only be half. So I'm remembering that the simple view really is a multiplication symbol. We're going to dismantle this SVR, this simple view of reading, and we're going to turn it on its sides. So, Kristen, go ahead. So you'll notice the 3 parts are still there. We have word recognition times language comprehension, and that equals reading comprehension. Hollis Scarborough is, I'm a fangirl of hers. She developed this reading rope over 20 years ago as a visual to understand how complex reading can be. So she took language comprehension and broke it down into 5 component parts: background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. And as those things become fine-tuned, a reader becomes increasingly strategic. She also took the word recognition strand, and those components are phonological awareness, so hearing sounds and words, decoding and spelling, so pulling the print off the page, and sight recognition, so knowing words immediately. You know when you see the word Louisville that it's Louisville. You do not have to look at every letter inside of it. So those, as a reader becomes more proficient, those become increasingly automatic. And as those 2 bands intertwine, you become a skilled reader or reading comprehension. And I don't know if you can see, but I have a piece of rope here. If one little piece becomes unruly, the whole rope gets wonky. I know that's kind of wacky. But this reading rope does not just apply to children, is essentially what I'm trying to convey, is that even as a grown-up in my 40s, I am still struggling when I read a plumbing or a thing from IKEA on how to put my shelf together. I still struggle in that genre. So my vocabulary knowledge might not be as strong. Or if I'm trying to read an article about like a law case or something, my verbiage is not strong, nor is my understanding of the genre. So my language structures might not be strong. So even as a grown-up, I am still working on language comprehension in areas that I'm not an expert or completely familiar with. So I want to go into, if you'll go to the next slide, this one does a nice job of explaining what those various components are. So I'm just going to give you about 45 seconds real quick to look at that. And again, if you think back to this rope that I undid right here, if I have one strand that is problematic or that is lacking, then my skilled reading is not going to be a tight rope at the end. Okay, so like this is my Tell on Lee story. I was a senior in high school. I had to do a book report. I chose Animal Farm because I thought animals were really cute. I wrote this great report all about pigs and chickens. And I think there might have been a cat in the story, if I remember correctly. And of course, I failed the book report, but it's because I did not have the verbal reasoning strand that went along with that genre, that I had no idea that the book was about politics. I know now, but that even as an experienced reader, as an 18-year-old in high school, I still had work to do with various strands of the rope, depending on what genre I was reading in. So we are going to take just a quick second. Kristen, if you want to go to the session one review slide and pull up, I think we have a poll. Is that right? So there's a multiple choice poll here. The Simple View of Reading by Goff and Tunmer is a seminal theoretical framework that explains, anyway, I'm not going to read these to you. There's several questions, kind of a little quiz. We would love for you to take this poll, and we're going to just ground our learning of the theoretical frameworks that we have studied thus far in our work here together. Take about 20 more seconds on the poll. Okay, Kristen, do you want to share the results?
So for the simple view of reading, I think everybody can see this. Lee, can you just shake your head yes or no? Awesome. So it looks like most of us are recognizing it's word recognition and language comprehension. I think this is so important because before I had knowledge of structured literacy and the research behind structured literacy, I thought, okay, if a student is struggling in my class with reading, I don't know what's causing that, right? Like, is it a vocabulary issue, which would be language comprehension? Is it like they don't know how to decode? Is it that they're just not familiar with this topic? Is it that I'm like doing a terrible job supporting them? I just couldn't really diagnose what was going on with the student. And so just to know that there's sort of two main categories where students might struggle: word recognition, actually like being able to read the words, and then language comprehension. Number two is so important because a lot of times we hear science of reading and we often think like, oh, that is about phonics. And so certainly phonics is not the only part of the science of reading. I want everybody to recall those 5 pillars that were in the pear deck. It really is about all 5 of those things coming together. It's not phonics alone or phonemic awareness alone, although it does emphasize that. It also says students need support with fluency, which is our next session, vocabulary, which is the session after that, and then comprehension, which is really the goal of all of this. And so I just want to reiterate that. Number 3, most of us got this one correct as well. Adolescents don't need the same thing as little kids, right? We know that we don't need to teach them the same way. We know that many of our adolescents don't need phonics or phonemic awareness. They need different kinds of support. And then, of course, Scarborough's rope, which Lee just talked about, is there are those 2 categories again: language comprehension, being most of what we work on in our secondary space, right? That is, in a perfect world, we would work on the top strand of the rope and we wouldn't have students who have gaps in foundational skills. However, we know that's not the case at the moment. Um, and that's kind of why we're here. So we are about to head into a breakout room. And one of the pieces of feedback we received from everyone is that there were some pretty big breakout rooms, and we have fewer people here tonight, but we do want you to have meaningful conversations. And so we're going to try this and see how it goes with all of these breakout rooms. There is a big chart on the screen. If you are on your phone, make sure you do your best to look closely to figure out which room makes the most sense for you. So I know we have some intermediate folks here, that's grades 4 and 5, but then we've broken up the middle school grades into 3 different groups. You can join a group based on your last name. So for example, if I was a grade 7 teacher, I'm a Tinch, I'm going to go into room 7. Um, the high school groups, we have individualized, and then we also have groups for our instructional leaders. If you are a person who's a professor, we love having our higher ed folks here. We love having leaders here. We love having KDE and co-op staff here. Really, really important partners in this work. And so if you're one of those individuals, we'd like to invite you to join a group that's most relevant to your work, whether you're working with teachers or coaches, etc. All right. So if you're able to rename yourself, just so we can see what rooms folks are going to be in, the way you do that is you hover over the bottom sort of control bar, find participants. When you click on participants, it'll give you a list of everybody in this Zoom call. And then we'd like for you to rename yourself so that we can see what group you're planning to be on if you have some difficulty getting into your group, especially our folks joining us from their phones, keeping in mind that some folks may not be able to participate if they are on their phones, um, or have other things going on that happen sometimes. So again, figure out which group makes the most sense for you tonight. I see a couple people have put the room number in there. Thank you for doing that as you're able. Lee, I think we're ready to open up the room. Oh, actually, what are you going to do in the great breakout room? Let me tell you what we're going to do. Crazy. Okay, so here are the questions. These were in the Pear Deck slides. What we want you to think about are these 3 things. One, what from the first session is a theoretical model that really helps you? Knowing that theory is not everyone's thing. A lot of us we want practice because that's what we do. We engage in instructional practice. But if you're thinking about a theoretical model that really helps your practice, which of those that we discussed is the reading brain, 5 pillars, simple view of reading, or the reading rope. And then in the Pear Deck slides, if you didn't get a chance to do those, there's a scientific journal that has some words that are really difficult to decode. And a lot like we did last week, we talked about what it feels like to be a student who is striving. And so, how did not being able to decode affect your comprehension? What was that like? And then the passage we're going to practice with tonight comes from Wit and Wisdom, which is a green rated, high quality instructional resource. And so I wanted you to identify some multisyllabic words that you think students might strive to read. Once you get into your groups, designate a person who can record your responses on their fall Padlet. Look at those colors. I'm really eager for that to happen. So if there is a person in your group who's willing to just click add comment and say what is discussed in your group, that helps us just know what's happening in a larger group like this. And so now we are ready for the breakout rooms to open. If you're in a room by yourself, come back and we will put you in a room with someone else. Thank you. See you in just a little bit. And you are self-selecting into those groups by clicking on breakout room and then scrolling to the breakout room that you identified.
It won't let me scroll down to 11.
Okay, yeah. Who's speaking? I'll put you in your room.
Amy Harned, Harned.
Oh, and you're sick. I'm so sorry. Here you
That's
go.
okay. Thank you.
I can't find the breakout rooms. I clicked breakout room, but I can't get into them.
Can I help you? What's your name?
Andrea Dotson. I should be in the room 8. I
All right,
can't.
I'm sending you there, Andrea.
All right, thanks.
Sarah, I see that you
I need help too.
I'm the only one in room 4.
All right. Let's get you there where you need to be.
And I need to be in room 17. Okay.
All right. Lee, I think Tina and Melody and Adeline, were you all able to? There's several people still in here. You may have to go and click join at the bottom. There will be like when you click on more, it'll say something like Lee Turner is inviting you to join breakout room blank.
I'm moving singles.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Abilene, do you have a preference on what room? For those watching the video, they're in small groups. Some groups are groups of 4, some are maybe a group of 8 or 9, and they're answering the 3 questions there on the left. Which theoretical model is most impactful? Describe your experience reading the scientific journal abstract about plasma. And then number 3, which multisyllabic words from the article Benjamin O. Davis Jr. passage would striving readers need support with?
Hi, Gina, I see you just joined us. We are in a breakout room at the moment. And if you are able to unmute, you can tell us which one you'd like to join, what grade level or role group you'd like to join.
Middle school or 8th grade?
All right, girl. Are you a teacher?
Yes.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks are coming back in. And we were able to watch lots of responses on the Padlet. Thank you all for doing that, just so we can all benefit from each other's discussions and yeah, just share. So we definitely appreciate. Special shouts out to our people who are willing to type on our Padlet. We really appreciate that. All right, I think we're all back in here. So again, thinking about that text, the Benjamin O. Davis Jr. passage, that's just the example we're going to use tonight. I realize it may just seem super random, like where did this come from? And so we are going to dig in and practice with that in just a few moments. Something that was a takeaway for me, particularly on number 2, is I noticed just it wasn't a positive experience. That's first of all, and we wouldn't likely ask our students to read something like that scientific journal article. However, that experience that we had of where we're just like read the first part of the word and then guess the rest, I think that's really common among many middle and high school students who don't yet have the decoding abilities they need. Or someone pointed out just the sounding out the words wasn't difficult, but it didn't help us understand the passage. So sometimes even if you can decode, there's still a comprehension component. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And then this person also talked about how just skipping over it. That's what a lot of our students do whenever they don't know how to decode a word. They'll just skip over it and hope that they get the best meaning that they can, right? And so how can we equip students to not just guess at the words or skip over the words, but to actually be able to engage deeply? And so these are the words that were identified. Plasma membrane, we'll take that one off unofficially since that was from the other passage, but from the Benjamin O. Davis, looks like we had aviator, instrumental, overwhelmed, exhilaration, and cadet. And I agree, those are all multisyllabic words that can easily be broken into morphemes that students hopefully could be able to comprehend the text better. So we're going to return to these later on. And at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens in the early grades. If you've not had an opportunity to learn about that before, how do we actually teach small children to become more phonologically aware and to learn phonics? So Leah is going to tell us a little bit about that process. I understand that many folks on the call are have an elementary background perhaps already, but for many of us, that's not something we've ever had an opportunity to study. So that's what we're going to get into now. Go ahead, Lee.
Unmute there. You might have heard the term phonemic awareness. You might have heard the term phonics. You might have also heard the term phonological awareness. And all three of those terms, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics, are often or commonly used interchangeably. And I want for you to walk away knowing that those three terms are very different. So 2 that we're going to talk about specifically today are phonemic awareness and phonics. And the biggest difference is that phonemic awareness is all about the sounds and words. Okay. These are things that you can do to words. You can manipulate words without looking at them on the page. It's all about the sounds that you hear inside the words. Phonics is actually pulling the letters or the print off the page, whether that is letters or whether that is braille or symbols or whatever. Phonics takes a visual and pulls it, and then the brain has to decode it. So let's go into just the hearing parts. So phonemic awareness is there at the bottom. That's the second ear, but I'm going to take a step up to the top of the screen. And this is phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is the awareness of all levels of speech sound. So this is the entire length of the word. It could be chunks of the word like a syllable. It could be an onset and rhyme. So the word R, car is the onset is k, the rhyme is R. And it also includes individual sounds and words, the phonemes. Phonemic awareness, and if you go down, it's just the individual sounds in words. It's where we can isolate individual sounds. For example, in the last name Tench, t, I, n, ch, has 4 phonemes. We can change the first letter in, or the first sound in Tench, t, 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 to a bench, right? So we can manipulate those things. We can also delete and substitute different sounds for words. So I want us to practice a little bit of some phonological awareness. So stay on mute. And I'm going to give you a very quick assessment, much like I would give a 6-year-old in my class who I thought might have some deficits in phonological awareness that we need to work on. And the first phonological assessment we're going to do is rhyming. So think about Dr. Seuss and all the fun words that you can make with rhyming words. So you are simply going to repeat what I say, and then you're going to either give me a thumbs up, yes, it rhymes, or a thumbs down, no, it doesn't. So let's do one together. I'm going to say top hop. You say top hop. Top hop. Does it rhyme or does it not rhyme? Very good. Top hop rhyme. Very good. Next one is run soap. Say run soap. Run soap. Does it rhyme or not rhyme? It does not rhyme. It does not have the same ending. That's very good. All right. Here's the tricky one. Bed said. You say bed said. Bed said. Does it rhyme or not rhyme? It rhymes. This is where you have to take your phonics eyeballs off of the page. I know they are spelled differently, but if you just close your eyes and listen to bed and said, the only difference is the beginning sound. B and s. They both end with ed, so those do rhyme. We are now going to do some phoneme blending. I'm going to say some sounds. Go back real quick, Kristen. And phoneme blending is very important when segmenting and blending are very important when a kid is learning how to spell words on the page. So we're going to use the word, let's say a child wants to spell the word must on their page, like I must have cake for dessert, must. So the first thing with the word must is we want to separate or segment those sounds in the word. So we can tap it. Must, and blend it back together. Do that with me. Must. And for each tap, we can write a letter that goes with it on our paper. All right. So that kind of brings us over to the phonics section. And Kristen, we can go ahead and move forward. And phonics is, of course, where we are going to talk about pulling the letters off the page, knowing that letters are going to come together to give us meaning in words. So words come in a variety of levels. First of all, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. You might hear an elementary teacher say, oh, we have to teach 52 plus 2 letters. And what they're talking about is all the lowercase letters, all the uppercase letters are different symbols. And then that weird A and the weird G, lowercase a and lowercase g that you often see printed in books are 2 more letters that students have to be able to understand when they see them. So you might hear them say, I have to teach 52 plus 2 letters. Those are each have a grapheme, okay? Sometimes when we put multiple letters together, they only make one sound. So we're in the grapheme phoneme section. The word unreachable only has 8 graphemes because CH, when we put that together, it becomes a digraph that makes a brand new sound. Ch, ch. It's a single sound. So CH is actually a grapheme. Even though it's 2 individual letters, when we put them together, it becomes one grapheme, and it is one phoneme. So unreachable has 8 graphemes and phonemes. We also want to teach kids syllables, and this really goes into when a child is older and they get to the 4th and through 12th grades, we want them to be able to know that a word has a part that is surrounding a vowel sound. Every syllable has a vowel sound. And when we know the rules of syllables, and that's a whole other study that we could do a whole other day. There are 6 main syllable types, and all those syllables have different spelling rules. And the different spelling rules for the different syllables are going to make you say the vowels in different ways. And so being able to break apart the word unreachable into its 4 syllables is going to help a child later when they come across those multisyllabic words for both reading and spelling. And finally, The last part of phonics, and this is really huge, of course, in middle and high school, are morphemes. Unreachable has 3 morphemes. Morphemes are the smallest meaning of, or smallest unit of meaning. So un means not, reach means to attain, and able means the ability to, right? Unreachable. And so while some of these morphemes may look or appear that these are just for older kids, let me rest assured, we teach morphemes in kindergarten. The morpheme S at the end of a word has meaning. It means more than one, right? The morpheme ED at the end of some verbs, it can make the D sound, the id sound, and the T sound. It can make a variety of sounds depending on the word it's attached to, but it always means past tense. So those are things we definitely teach in kindergarten. So the idea of morphological analysis is not something new for 6th graders and above. It just might be the term morphological analysis that is new. So if we move on, every phonics or foundational skill block in a classroom, especially K3 now that it's law, is going to have a scope and sequence of the different letters and the different graphemes that are taught. They are going to be systematic, which means they have a particular order. They are going to be explicit, which means I am directly going to tell you that CH says ch. Now you practice CH says ch. And then we're going to read it a bunch of times in a decodable book. And then we're going to write it a bunch of books. We're going to write chips, and we're going to write church, and we're going to write all the words that go with ch. And we're going to have 40 some odd exposures of the CH sound, probably in a 30-minute lesson. And so that explicitly teaching you those sounds is going to help you orthographically or permanently map it into your brain. The idea, of course, is twining that bottom part of Scarborough's rope to make it increasingly automatic. In addition to having a particular sequence, as I said, we have to be very explicit. And there's a lot of lesson plan templates that you can find online. The Reading League has an excellent one. The second one here is a 2-pager. It's by letters. Anything that's structured literacy template or an OG template is going to, Orton Gillingham is going to have an explicit phonics template. Your MTSS director or your instructional coach, if they can't find you a particular lesson, or they can find somebody in elementary land who could help them find that, because making sure you have all the components in a quick, you do 3 minutes of phonological awareness and 5 minutes of phonics and all those different pieces, and jamming them into 30 minutes is real fast. And it's really important, though, because it increases the number of exposures that our children will get for the different letter sounds. Of course, the overarching goal is not to be able to decode words, but if I know they can decode words, then I can work on the comprehension that goes along with it. We read to make meaning. We read to learn things, not to just say that we can pull the print off the page. Additionally, what you're going to find is that as kids move into 4th grade and beyond, they're going to be coming with maybe a reading improvement plan that will be on Infinite Campus. Their family might say, oh, I got a read at home plan. When my child's 3rd grade teacher came along and said that they struggled with something. These are all things that have come out of the Read to Succeed Act that is in full, complete implementation as of July 1 of this year. So if a child does struggle with reading, especially if they have been in kindergarten through 3rd grade in the past year or two, then you will be able to find their history of that on Infinite Campus at this point. And you'll be able to know what interventions, structured literacy interventions they had, and maybe even be able to view their reading improvement plan that is very specific to the phonics and the knowledge building components of structured literacy. So overall, the why, and I'm going to read this to you because I don't want to paraphrase it. It's just so powerful. Underdeveloped phonemic awareness reflects phonological processing problems that can hinder reading development by making it difficult to learn phonics. So not being able to hear the different sounds hinders phonics. Sounding out words, remembering written words, and spell words phonetically. For example, a 2nd grader who writes fog for frog or jup for jump is not perceiving the second sound in the beginning consonant blend fr, or the second to last sound in the final consonant blend. These sound combinations can be difficult for some students to notice until phonemic awareness instruction explicitly focuses attention on interior sounds and spoken consonant blends. And those interior sounds show up the older kids get and the more complex those words become. And so if you start noticing that kids are missing some of those interior sounds, it really might not be a phonics problem where they're pulling the print off the page. It very might be a phonological or phonemic awareness problem. And finally, I want us to just always keep in mind that it is not the classroom teacher's job in 6th through 8th grade to figure out what these deficits are and then provide the intervention. Your job is to raise the flag. Hey, instructional coach. Hey, MTSS leader. Hey, interventionist. This kid is struggling, and I think it's because they can't pull the words off the page. Help. How can I give them an assessment? What assessments might you have? What can we do? Help me figure this puzzle out. Because you guys are literature experts. You guys are genre experts. You're not the experts on these foundational skill sets, but your coaches and your MTSS coordinators and your special ed teachers and your interventionists, they will be able to help you figure out what to do next.
I just want to emphasize that a lot of times our impulse upon hearing information like just showed us what it looks like in elementary school, and we want to jump feet first into like, okay, I want to help these students. We need data to tell us what kind of instructional moves we need to make. We don't just want to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that they know the R controlled vowel, or some other phonologic or phonic skill that maybe we have a suspicion they haven't mastered. And so those evidence-based decisions, those data-based decisions are so important. And we just never ever want to send the message that a classroom teacher on here has to do all this alone. And so we are able to consult with folks about that. We have an MTSS coordinator at the state, Melissa Wainwright, who's fantastic. And so all of that diagnostic data and screening data I just mentioned can help make those decisions so that we as classroom teachers aren't just sort of fumbling through and trying to figure out what our students need. So the most common question that Lee and I get about teaching multisyllabic word decoding and morphemic analysis is, where do I start? So I don't have a program. I don't have a list of words. Do I just like pick words that I think are important, or like ask Google or Chat GPT, what words should I teach students to decode? And so this was a really common question we got last month. Like, what do I do? And so even whether you have an adopted curriculum or your district gives a lot of freedom, or whatever the situation you're in, we recommend starting with the text you're teaching in Tier 1 instruction. So recidivism is a really important word, and I want kids to know that word, but I'm not just going to pull a word out of nowhere. I'm going to use the text that my students are already encountering in order to help them decode those words so that they can use them in their reading, in their writing, in all of our discussions about the text and the knowledge that we're covering. So we just encourage so strongly to start there, whether you have a program or not. So make sure that you have access to these two they're not forms. These two documents. Lee is putting those in the chat. One is the text that we're going to be working with, and it is majorly pared down just for us to sort of practice what it would look like to teach some multisyllabic word decoding and some morphemic analysis. And then we also have sort of a summary sheet that has different strategies you might consider based on your students' needs and the text that you're working with. So another question that we get really commonly is this even in the standards for middle school and high school? Like, am I like out of line? Am I violating the state law if I go off and teach decoding and morphology in middle school and high school? And the answer is decoding and morphology are throughout absolutely the reading foundational skills. RF stands for reading foundational skills. You can see it here for grades 4 and 5. They start decoding multisyllabic words in grade 3, and then they keep refining those skills throughout intermediate and middle school. But what happens in middle school? Here we have grades 6, 7, and 8. Guess what? Students are engaging in morphemic analysis in our standards when they're asked to do standard 4, which calls for them to use context clues, Greek and Latin affixes and roots, and then reference materials. Anytime we're working with students on Greek and Latin affixes and roots, shake your head if you do that at school. That is morphemic analysis. That's morphology at work. So you are absolutely not straying away from the standards if you are doing that work. That is something that kids need in order to make sense of the work that they do. What about high school? Guess what? Yes, it is part of the high school standards too. Guess what? As proficient adult readers, all of us are learning a little bit more about our language's history. And you know what? People who speak English have been a lot of places in the world as our language is being developed. So it is a mixed bag of language history. And so I find that stuff absolutely fascinating. Students, they can take it or leave it sometimes, but absolutely, we are not in violation of the standards or straying away if we are teaching them morphemic analysis. Now, if you have with you our text that we're using, that IES practice guide, on page 11, there is this wonderful list of 10 things that you can do to get students working on multisyllabic words and becoming more automatic text readers. Now, you know your students, you know your local context. We definitely don't want folks, just supplementing off on their own. We want you to do this within a professional learning community. Talk to your grade level teams about which one of these makes the most sense for the students that you're working with. But here's that list of 10. You could bookmark or put a sticky note on page 11, because these are the activities that the text recommends. Tost et al., this group of researchers, found, hey, these are the things that actually worked. We don't want to just waste our energy. And so we're going to talk about 5 of those tonight. I just want to say that a list of prefixes and suffixes that aren't attached to a text that's being studied may not help the students much, right? Like, they're not going to have anything for that to stick to. If you are a fan of the Knowledge Matters Campaign podcast that you all listened to for last month, one of the things in that podcast is that knowledge is like Velcro. It's got to have something to stick to. And so if we just are randomly showing students like, hey, here are the prefixes and suffixes to know, I don't think that much is going to stick. And we're not setting them up to really learn those and know those and work with them. And so we want to give them those meaningful exposures, but we also want to do it within the context of the texts that are being studied in our classes. And so that activity where it says to read a list of high frequency prefixes and suffixes, I think I would add to it the texts that are being studied. If you are a little fuzzy on morphemes, and it's many middle and high school teachers I know who teach English had to take linguistics or a history of the English language, which we called HEL, H-E-L, history of the English language, back in the day. Maybe it's rusty to you and you learned this at some point. I just want to recommend this document right here that says vocabulary through morphemes. If you're just like, I'm not sure what all the morphemes are, sometimes teachers feel like they don't know every Greek and Latin suffix, or they don't know that a word was Anglo-Saxon, or they don't know that it came from the Old French, or whatever the situation is. Don't let that kind of insecurity get in your way of helping and supporting students with morphemic analysis. And tools like this absolutely help the students with that. So let's say that from our text that we have our Benjamin O. Davis, we know overwhelmed was in there, exhilaration was in there. We give the students the prefixes and the suffixes, and maybe we have them sort them into these different columns, right? So many different ways you could do this to have them engage with these, to move them around, to have students, yes, reading even these small little chunks. And that may seem like, I don't know that, I don't want to insult my students' intelligence. We know that students are skipping over words. We know that often, right? I don't want to make a blanket statement. Often students are skipping over words. Often students are seeing the first part of the word and then guessing the rest of it. If that's happening in our class, one way we can support everybody, even if we don't have access to great diagnostic data or great screening data, is we can break the words apart and do these readings of these parts of the words that we know are in the text that we're reading. I do want to give a shout out to sorting, because it is multisensory. It can be collaborative. So whether you have the students move these things around on the screen, I used to be a Spanish teacher. We were big time into manipulatives where kids would move things around on the desk. High school students and middle school students enjoy that as a warm-up. If those are the words you're going to be encountering in the text today, it can be a way just to sort of break up instruction and get them ready to read and encounter those words. Of course, we don't just want them knowing the words in isolation. We want them, or excuse me, the morphemes in isolation. We want them to know what those morphemes mean. And so one way that we can do that is have them match each of those. And that can just be like a simple matching activity. It can be a pair deck. It can be Jamboard no longer exists. Rest in peace, Jamboard. We miss you. But so many other ways that we can get students to engage either with just a this is a slide, or on FigJam, which is sort of the new Jamboard. So many ways we can have them matching these up and making sure that they know the meanings. Now, it is so important that students don't just aren't exposed to these morphemes and we're like, good, you have these morphemes. This is awesome. We want students to see them in the context of the word. And so the next activity that's recommended from the IES guide is to underline prefixes and suffixes. And again, this is such a simple, low yield, low prep for the teacher. Lord, we love that stuff where we don't have to, completely reinvent something. If we have an already adopted curriculum, we're just asking students to underline those suffixes and perhaps circle those, underline the prefixes, circle the suffixes. And this is very quick for the student, and it's also supporting everybody in breaking down the words into those meaningful parts without insulting anybody's intelligence, right? Everybody's doing this. Another activity that's recommended from the IES guide is to read those sentences containing multisyllabic words. And I love this because it's not just this morpheme that's sitting on the wall, like here's the morphemes that we've learned. It's morphemes in context, right? When we break down those words into meaningful parts, we want it to be in service of comprehension. It's not just that, oh yeah, now we know the Greek and Latin root. We now know how to use it in context. We know how to understand it in context. We can talk about it. We are building knowledge of the word. And so this is on your strategy sheet. It is something that is extremely adaptable to any text that you're working with, maybe even tomorrow or later this week. You basically break down, get all the sentences that have those multisyllabic words you think students might struggle with once they encounter them. Get students into pairs and ask them to alternate between reading their sentence and their partner's sentence, and then they switch, right? And so this gets everybody reading. It's not you reading out loud to the class, which can be our temptation sometimes, right? We know if students struggle to read, we want to read to them so that they access the text. But this is getting everybody involved. It's not popcorn reading where we're randomly calling on kids, stressing everybody out, but it's getting them into the text, really zoomed in on words to support their comprehension. And so when we do read the big text, the longer text, students are like, oh yeah, that was my sentence. I got it. I know that word. I already have broken it down into meaningful parts with my partner. And so it's just an opportunity to give students support towards the grade level text. We're not pulling them out or singling them out. Again, districts are in different places with what data they have on students. And so this is for you as a teacher to have something that's getting students involved in the text, really zoomed in on words and on sentences to scaffold them towards that grade level text. I'm talking a mile a minute, and I promise you're going to have a second to ask questions soon. All right, the last something that you could add on to this is having students actually circle those words and then even break them apart there as well. Okay. I love this activity. I wish I came up with this. I really do, but this is just straight from the guide. And it is a modification of what's in the guide. So recommended activity 4 is to ask students to write new words by adding prefixes and suffixes to base words. I think this is so important for our multilingual population. This is wonderful for our special education students. This is wonderful for even adults, just to play with words a little bit. And so let's say we identified the word acceleration. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask students to break it down into those meaningful parts. We've got our prefix, we've got our root, we've got our suffix. Then we're going to do what's called morphemic analysis, remembering that all 3 of these are morphemes. And so we're just analyzing, we're breaking apart how these morphemes fit together and how they create a new word. Now, no teacher in the state of Kentucky is expected to know what each of these roots or suffixes mean, right? I don't know them. I'm trying, I really am, but I don't know all of them, right? Doing the best that we can. So you can use something like NM Online. It's reputable source that helps you or helps students look those things up. Don't feel like you have to get in front of students and know what all of them mean. Then we fill out what each of them are, and we can infer, right, or piece together the meaning based on what we have. And so instead of us just defining the word for students, or instead of, which is sometimes appropriate, we'll talk about that in the vocabulary section, or just throwing them into the text where they're just kind of having to figure it out, we're already breaking down the word together. This works wonderfully with advanced students as well. I know we spend a lot of time in this space talking about our striving readers, but our students who are advanced readers, this works wonderfully with them as well, because it empowers them to be able to break apart more words and to find the meaning of more words. Because guess what? They're also held to those standards that are all the way from 4th grade through 12th grade. Lee's got something to say.
I think somebody just helped me in the chat. We were wondering what that website you recommended was called, but it looks like edamonline.com. So there we go.
It's on the screen and it's on the strategy sheet, and you all can always stop me because I get so excited about this topic. This is so empowering to our students. I don't want kids in Kentucky to come across words, or really anywhere in the world, bless us all, to come across words and feel like they don't know what to do with them. But when we break words down and explicitly show students this is this middle school and high school application of what my friend Lee Turner was talking about. When we explicitly teach kids those letter sounds and what those letters represent, this is what we do for our middle and high school kids. This is what it looks like for them, to show them how these morphemes can make longer words and how that contributes to meaning. So let's say you want to do this with your students tomorrow. Guess what? This is a blank document that's available. Please do so thoughtfully, right? I hope that you're planning along with your team and in conjunction with the folks in your district. But if this seems like something you'd want to bring back to your group, this is adaptable and it's available in the chat as well as in our other documents. This is advanced, but I think that it is very fun, not just because I'm a word nerd, but because this is a great way to end class. Let's say that you've been working with some multisyllabic words and want to charge students with sort of playing with the language. So you pick the words, 1 or 2 or 3, if you have lots of time to think about for the students to play with. Completely, of course, is an adverb. We know because it's got the "ly" on the end, right? We ask students to make it an action. If you're able in the chat, how would we make completely an action? What would that word be? You can just type it in the chat. All right, we could make it the present progressive, like I am completing, or if it is completed, past tense, I seek to complete, the infinitive form, or just complete, right? The verb without the infinitive. So y'all know how language works, but to show students like, hey, you really do know these things. I don't know if you've had the experience that I had all the time when I taught grammar. My students, okay, Joseph, pop off. Whenever I would say something grammatical, it's like my students would like completely like, it's like they don't care. They don't, often they don't know these things, or they've been taught it and it just hasn't stuck for some reason, right? They don't know the parts of speech or the different verb forms, etc. And so something I found that empowers students and makes me feel a little less crazy is to describe what the part of speech is. So instead of saying make it into a verb and then everyone just stares at me, I say make it into an action, because what's really important is that they know the different component parts of our language and how it works, right? Bonus would be they know the parts of speech and they can label them, right? If that's not the situation that you find yourself in, rather than making yourself crazy, just describe what the thing does, right? Ooh, we got some future tense in the room. Future progressive even. Okay, so let's play a little bit more. How would we make complete into a person, place, or thing? Or what we would call in English teacher land a noun. What would it be? All right, Sherry, BGISD representing. So completion, yes, awesome. So this is showing students, and oh, Ingrid, I just want to point out what Ingrid did. She put "the" in front of it. And sometimes if students, multilingual learners, a learner who's been speaking English their entire life, and they don't feel comfortable with some of those parts of speech, okay, completeness as well. If you can say "the" or "a" in front of it, that helps students recognize that it can be a thing. And again, why does this matter? If these aren't words that students are going to be using, it's showing students word relationships, and that's empowering them for the next time they come across these words, or the next time they're writing and they want to say like it is being completed, and they can instead say completion. Okay, playing a little bit more just because it's so much fun and I think it's so helpful for students. How do we make completely into an adjective or something that describes? Oh, Ingrid, that's ominous. The completing. Nice. Okay, back to the adjective. Okay. Okay, Carrie, I like what you've done, adding a different word onto it to show how it could be an adjective. Sherry, you're right. Just the word complete, like it is complete, would be technically describing something, right? All right, yes, I like that too, of adding a hyphenated prefix. Yes, Sherry, you're exactly right. Great application. And if students can show that, that's even better. Okay, moving on to the last column, write another word that shares a root or an affix, any part of speech. So students could play with com, they could play with eat, they could play with ly. Seeing great examples in the chat: replete, comply, complain, compare. Again, you could see that a lot of our advanced students would love this. They would love showing off all that they know, just like you all are, which makes me really happy. It's fun to play with words. It's fun to show students that words are exciting, that there's an inventiveness and a playfulness and a joy in words. And that's the point of everything that we do in English class. To learn how to be a better communicator and to see more. Hey, Sean, I know you, my friend from JCPS. How are you? Go ahead and come off mute. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to share, because we're using the EL curriculum, and so it does a lot with the affixes. And so I use for a practice, Pear Deck has a program called Pear Deck Practice Pear Deck. And so the students like it because they get to create an avatar, they get to be on teams, and that's a way for me to be able to do some practice and also let them know that they're not that smart and like you don't know this word. But they get to compete and they're still practicing on affixes, grammar, whatever they do. It has all the content areas, any subject, but that's just another way that I can get in practice without it not being tedious and it doesn't feel like actual work.
Right. So there is something motivating when it feels gamified, and also challenges. Like everybody loves a challenge, and kids are everybody, right? They love a challenge. And so this is a way where again, it can serve the texts that are being read in class, right? Like that's what this is about. It's not just pulling random words that we think are important for kids, but that are within those texts that we're studying in class. I would love to do aviator with you all. Maybe we can meet up after the session and do aviator and do all the words. But I think this is a great way to end a class. Again, very low prep, very high yield, and can break up a routine if that's what you're needing. Okay. Oh, wow. There's some answers. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment to reflect. You can do it on the Padlet or just on your own. But really just, it says 2 minutes. I think we better do 60 seconds. How is your school currently supporting students in decoding multisyllabic words? And then what are some next steps for you as an individual or with your team? And you may be the leader of your team. What are some things that you're considering for a next step to build on what you're already doing? You can put it in the Padlet, or if you just want to keep it in your heart, you can. All right, wrapping up that reflection again, either on the Pear Deck, which I see some really encouraging things about using data to make decisions. That is so important. And that's not the focus of this. We could do a whole webinar series on that. That is so, so important. And again, every district's in different places with that. But I'm also seeing some things about using hopefully some of the things we've learned or things you already know about to support students with encountering those multisyllabic words. So at this point, we'll talk really quickly about recommendation 10, which is really getting at comprehension. And that is that we ask students to read a passage with the words they're learning at least twice with two different purposes. I love this recommendation. Students need multiple reads of passages, and that can be tricky to break in to make time for that. And also, it can be like students are like, why do I have to read this twice? I don't want to read it twice. I didn't want to read it once. Why are you making me read it again? So finding ways to give students different purposes for reading, and maybe that first purpose is just to decode the multisyllabic words, right? That's a great purpose for reading. Find those words, decode them. And then giving them text dependent questions that have them using those words again. Because guess what? Kids need 10 exposures to words to really own them. We'll talk about that in session 4. And those questions are ways to get them to use the text, to use those words, and maybe even do like we just did and offer multiple versions of that word or change the word, right? So instead of saying inspiration, saying inspire, etc. So those text dependent questions are on the sample chart, but the good news about us living in the era of high quality instructional resources is that a lot of times those questions are there. We don't have to write those. We are going to end tonight. We have some announcements after this, so don't just run away. We're going to end tonight with going back into our breakout room and just for a time for you to share what are these strategies or something else that you know about. We talked about a lot of different ways to get students to play with words and to do morphemic analysis. So just to give you an opportunity to talk with somebody about that, looks like we're going to have just at 5 minutes to do that. So you're going to go back into your breakout room. If someone is able, some angel in each breakout room is able to do the Padlet documentation. We just appreciate that so much. So we'll head into our breakout rooms. I'll leave the question up for folks to access. We'll see you back here in about 5 minutes.
Kristen, do you mind showing the Padlet on the screen?
I do not mind. Thank you.
That way our viewers at home or later in the recording can see what the different groups are chatting about.
We did get something in the chat sent privately that one school that it's a K-8 school and they have a vertical morphemic and they have a vertical alignment for a list of words that they're or prefixes and suffixes that they're studying. Hello, welcome back. I'm still typing a response to someone. You all can watch me. I'm almost finished. Lee, you may add on to that discussion that was happening. All right, we are all back, and it is just about time for us to head out for tonight. So the things that I'm seeing on the Padlet really centered around the use of those prefixes and suffixes. I love all the things that folks are saying about leveraging what you already have in your resource. It is so true. If you have something like EL, Wit and Wisdom has word work.
Oh, yeah.
Someone's saying something, Ashley. Sorry. Maybe somebody accidentally came unmuted.
I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. I apologize.
It's all totally fine. If you have Amplify, it has lots of word work. All of them have vocabulary, even if they don't have morphemic analysis happening the way that we saw it. And so a lot of it can already be leveraged within those resources that have been adopted as we get to know them and spend more time with them and figure out how we can use them to support students. And so we're in our final 4 minutes. So I want to talk about next steps. And a couple of announcements. So in order to be documented as a person who attended tonight and to get credit for this session, you have an opportunity later to fill this out. It is a sign out. It is very short. We cut it down even from last time. If you thought the last one was long, we did try to make it a little bit shorter this time so that you could answer pretty quickly and then move on with life. And so that reflection is going to be in the chat. Again, that's how we award credit or those certificates that will come to you in March. Even if you're a person who's not doing this for credit, it's always nice to hear from people and to get feedback. The main way to know what's going on with the standards in particular, I had mentioned that a standards review is coming up in January. So the main way to just keep totally informed of what's going on with the standards is to subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out on Wednesdays. And so it comes right to your inbox. If you want to look at previous newsletters, we have an archive available on our website. This is how you subscribe. Recommend it just once a week and you can skim it really quickly to see what's going on with ELA. That's how information gets out. We have several literacy organizations in our state, and one of them is the Kentucky Council of Teachers of English. They just opened this week their opportunity to submit proposals if you'd like to present about something good going on in your classroom. And then you also can register to attend. We actually have the conference chair, Sarah Webster from Boone County. She's here with us tonight. And so if you have questions, I'm so happy to connect you with Sarah. I plan to be there. It's coming up in June, so very well planned ahead, but we want you to mark your calendars to be there. Next time we get together, we are going to be talking about fluency, which is so much fun with big kids, way more fun than I ever thought it could be. And so there are a couple pages to read, looks like 5 pages, and there's a note catcher if that's helpful to you. But the main thing is that you read those 5 pages and look over them. Because fluency was not something I learned a lot about in my undergrad and then didn't know how important it was until graduate school. So I would love to do that. And then we have lots of different fluency bonus texts to read. And so those are also linked on the website, on the learning plan, and then also in the note catcher. They're there as well if any of these seem interesting to you. Or if you don't have time to read them at all, we'll just see you in November and we'll talk about it again. All right. That is all from us for now. We are so grateful for all everyone does to support middle and high school students. It's a privilege to get to be with you guys tonight, and we hope you have a really great rest of October. And again, just let us know that you completed and got credit for this session by completing the form. Everyone take care and talk soon.